Welcome to Tenacity with Sonia C, the podcast where entrepreneurs, founders, and ambitious professionals come to learn from those who have walked the path, navigating challenges and achieving success. Whether it's thriving in business, pivoting, scaling for growth, fundraising, or finding work-life balance, dealing with loneliness, adversity, or overcoming personal struggles. Our guests share the insights and strategies that have empowered them to level up. I'm your host, Sonia, and let's get started. My guest today is Rob Matzkin, a serial entrepreneur who's launched over 17 companies and exited 2 successfully. He's an advisor, coach, and investor who's spent his life building, rebuilding, and helping other founders find purpose and performance in the chaos of entrepreneurship. But what makes Rob's story powerful isn't just his business wins. It's his honesty about burnout, ego, and the deep personal transformation it took to rediscover his voice as a leader. In this episode, we talk about what it really means to trust yourself again after failure, how to rebuild from burnout, why even the most successful leaders still need coaches, and the brutal truths behind raising capital and navigating investors. This one's about rediscovering your authenticity as a founder and why tenacity isn't about being fearless, it's about doing it anyway. Hi, Robert. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm amazing. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited to have you and go through your long list of accomplishments. Okay, well, let's talk about that. You turned a venture, which was basically a golf tournament. You turned it into a 20K business at a very
hmm
young age. Looking back, what did that early entrepreneurial moment teach you about spotting opportunities?
Well, I mean, one is when there's an opportunity to take advantage of it, right? It's like, oh, everybody keeps saying, I wish I did that, or if I did that, or everybody has an idea. The ideas are about what successful businesses are about is the execution, right? And that one little business, wasn't just any golf tournament, it was the US Open. So it was the biggest golf tournament
Oh.
of the year. And what was cool was there wasn't parking for 10 miles and they were busing everybody in. So we were able to charge a few $100 a car, or not a few hundred, it was like anywhere from 75 to $150 a car, depending on which day it was. And we had to
Yeah.
deal with local law enforcement and regulations and the town. And then I had to deal with staffing and my friends wanted to kill me, and my friends wanted equity and all this stuff. So it was like this little mini business in a microcosm in a weekend. But yeah, it was just when you see an opportunity, take it and run with it. And if I could have done that business very differently. I could have planned 6 months out, and I could have got regulations and permitting and denied, and I just
hmm
ran with it, and I ran lean, and I ran fast, and I broke things, and it was all good, including sprinkler
Yeah.
heads that my dad wasn't happy about.
So I totally agree with you that like everybody has ideas. It's all about the execution. But the reason why I asked you that question is because I have conversations with people every day that are like, I have an idea and I have an idea and I have an idea, but it's not just the execution. But then there's those people that have ideas and they're just fearful that it's not going to work. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Am I going to fail at this miserably?
So this is a weird analogy, but
Okay.
a hero runs into a burning building, right? Or runs
Yeah.
towards the shots of gunfire, right? Or whatever it is, but they're scared and they do it anyway.
Mm,
If you're not, you're just crazy,
yeah.
right? So it's knowing your fear, seeing your fear, and doing it anyway.
So burnout was a turning point for you in your life. Can you take us back to that moment and what it took to rebuild your definition of, of success around purpose and well-being?
Which time?
You pick one. I know there's a lot for you.
um, yeah, it's actually interesting. I think a year and a half ago, I got out of a really toxic relationship. It really messed me up. Usually, I get out of a relationship, I'm like, okay, like I move on, and this really kind of beat me up a bit, and everybody
Mm.
said I lost who I was with that
Oh.
individual. And I kind of lost my North Star a little bit, and she kind of drag me in a different direction, which was interesting for me because usually
Mm,
people can't do that to me, regardless. And it took, I think, until about 6 months ago until I really found my power, my voice again. And I really found it newly. But what did I do to get there? I went back to my roots. I went back to my friends. I went back to what matters to me, what fulfills
mm,
me, what makes me happy. I made life simple again in the
mm,
sense that I wasn't doing all these things and I really was doing what's moving the needle, what
mm,
works, what doesn't, how do I alleviate the stressful things from my life. And it was actually a gift because now, and even now I was talking to my coach just yesterday about my voice, who I am, rediscovering the power of my voice in an authentic manner and rediscovering my
mm.
authenticity in a different and deeper way. So I don't know if I quite answered that question, but there's definitely some mechanical things you could do. But I just
Mm,
think knowing that, I think step one also is getting rid of that thing that is causing the burnout, right? Or
yeah,
reinventing it or changing it or whatever that might be, because it was
yeah,
compounding. There's multiple businesses. There's one business is doing well, another business is failing, a failing relationship, and just kind of all compiled that. Yeah,
yeah.
wasn't you know,
You just made a comment, and I want to touch base on it because I find that a lot of conversations that I have, especially like with early stage entrepreneurs, you just said you had a conversation with your coach.
yep.
So the reason I bring it up is because like people at the stage of their career and success in life where you're at, usually people looking in are like, oh, they are the coaches. They don't see people at that level like as having a coach. Can you tell our audience a little bit why you choose to have one and what's the importance of that of having a coach even at that point in your life and your career? What are the
All right.
benefits?
So a
Tell
few
me a little
things.
bit about it.
So a few things, right? One, what changed my path, my career, my life was going through personal growth and development and looking at my ego and seeing that my ego didn't have any place and people didn't respond to it, didn't have any
Ooh,
place in business. And I spent about 15 years trying to dissolve my ego. And
wow.
and I would say before it was my ego filled the room and I every once in a while I could clear out the smoke of the room, which was the ego out. These days, I pretty much have an empty room, and every once in a while, the smoke comes back in. These days, more
Mm,
more so than normal, but I think keeping that in check is something that's really important to me and makes me really effective. Because the more authentic and vulnerable I am, the more powerful I am in business, the more effective I am in life and business. But with all that being said, you're absolutely right. From there, from learning, going through courses and programs there, I hired a coach, I think 12 years ago. And we've
mm-hmm.
had calls every week. And I go, and some weeks I talk about what's working and what I really talk about what's not working in my
Right.
in my performance as an individual and my performance as a leader and my performance as a business as a business executor, right? And
Mm-hmm.
as an executive. And I think that reflection, we every professional athlete, every performance athlete has a coach. Every performance
Yeah.
leader has a coach because somebody could look at you from the outside and give you a reflection. And I think it's the most powerful thing that you could have. And if you're not, how are you actually going to be at peak performance? Because you can't coach yourself.
Because you're right. Athletes, even when they're like at their best, they have coaches. I
Yeah.
was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was this famous guy who basically um, helps actors, coaches actors like on
Yeah.
site when they're doing movies.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things he mentioned was, like sometimes he has to work with like Leonardo DiCaprio's coach or, these old timers that are still acting. And that was the point that he was making. He was like, these guys have won like Academy Awards. They're so good at their craft, but yet they will still have a coach because life doesn't, you're always learning. There's always room for improvement.
Always. Well, I mean, look at golfers. The golfers have a coach next to them every shot. It's the
That's true.
caddy handing them the club, right? That is their coach, right?
Yeah.
Every business leader there's a book, The $1 Trillion Coach. He coached Sergey Brin and Larry Page and all these other impressive individuals, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and here's the thing, the definition of wisdom that changed my life was if I could learn from other people's mistakes as if
Mm.
they are my own, I will have a cumulative wisdom of hundreds of years, right? So somebody could
Yeah.
give you a reflection. You're not in it alone. I think a lot of early entrepreneurs, the real fear isn't the fear of starting.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the real fear is failure or embarrassment. Those are what comes up for me, and I do it anyway. But if you
Yeah.
could share what's not working with a group of advisors, a coach, a mentor, it goes a world of difference. Now, I also I say this to my clients because I do a lot of coaching and advising as well, is opinions are like, I don't know how if I could curse here, but opinions are like
You
assholes.
can.
Everyone has one. It's a little of a crude comment, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everybody has one, and everybody has an opinion. And you want to take the opinions with a grain of salt. But the more
Mm.
wisdom those opinions have, and the more, the more gravitas they have, and the more related to that you are, that they are, yeah,
Yeah.
I have a whole ecosystem of people that support me.
I
So
love that.
there's one more quote that I like. You got me on a roll here. But there's a guy named Zig Ziglar. I don't know if anybody heard of him. He's the Tony Robbins of the 70s and 80s. And he has
Okay.
this quote that I love. He goes, "No turtle ever got on a fence post all by its lonesome." So no turtle ever got on top of a fence post all by its lonesome. So we're not going to
Yeah.
get where we're going alone. Somebody's going to help. We're going to need you. You want a team. You want an ecosystem.
Yeah.
There's this concept of this $1 billion solo founder. I hate
Mm.
it. I hate
I
it.
agree. Yeah.
And you're not going to get there alone. And if you do, good to you. But I don't think that's how you should build it.
But it's
It's the
so much
hard way.
harder.
It's the hard way.
Yeah,
I
it's so
just
much
I
harder.
I just spoke to my buddy. He sold two of his companies
Mm-hmm.
Friday, well, for a really good sum. And I go, dude, what's up? He goes, I was sick. I couldn't do it on my own anymore. And
Yeah.
this dude wakes up at 3 a.m. and
Oh,
works out like a beast. The guy's yoked and starts his day at 3 a.m. This dude is the
that's
most
insane.
ambitious go-getter self-starter you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, I can't do it alone anymore. I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
I'll never do it alone again.
Yeah, and there's also something with like having like when you have a team or even a co-founder, just that companionship to be able to shoot the shit and be like, "Oh man, I'm having a really crappy day today and I'm really frustrated." Just having that alone, I think really helps too.
The camaraderie is huge, but I think what really gets there is at some point you're driving and
Yeah.
something happens where you have a week of burnout. You go on vacation, you're down, the other person's up. Somebody else is there to carry the torch.
So, what does it take to find a good coach? Is it someone that's like you? Is it someone that's the opposite? Like if I
Of
wanted to
course,
go
it's
and look
me.
for
You don't want to go any further now.
I thought you were going to say get someone who's the opposite of you because they're going to challenge
Oh,
you.
well, no, if you need a good coach, it's me, is what I'm
No, no,
saying. That's
call
a different,
you.
yeah.
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
But no, yeah, I think somebody yin and yang, right? Somebody who compliments you well. Look for somebody who has it depends where you think you need the most love and attention. If you're a technical founder, definitely get somebody's business focused. Definitely get
Mm-hmm.
somebody. The key thing is somebody who you feel heard, right? Somebody who can communicate with you,
Mm.
right? It's if they can't hear you or you can't hear them,
Yeah.
what's the point? And somebody you respect.
Okay, so you've launched 16 companies, right?
I
I'm
have.
not. Okay. And you had two exits.
I think I
What
lost.
pattern?
I launched one last week, maybe 17. But anyway,
Okay,
sorry.
maybe
Go
it's
ahead.
17. Damn, I'm wrong. What patterns did you start to notice in what made some ventures succeed and others stall?
So the big thing that I've been really preaching for the mountaintops is, well, again, ego, but we have a lot of hubris where we have this entrepreneurial seizure, which we discussed. We're brave. We go out and do it. And then we have this hubris that we are going for it and nobody's going to get in our way. And no matter what anybody says or tells us or deniers or denial or anything, we're just going to go do it, which leads us to believe that the thoughts in between our head are accurate and we know it's best. And you
Mm,
need to have that arrogance to do it. Pause. You still have to test and listen, not to opinions, but to the
mm-hmm,
market, to what the consumer or your buyer is telling you. You have to test.
mm,
You have to test and you have to get data, right?
right.
So, you have to run tests that they could be small tests, yes or no. But if test and data, I don't mean like ones and zeros, but if feedback is guiding you, that it's empirical, not opinions, is guiding
Mm-hmm.
you, you're going to get to the right answer. And don't be afraid to get a no or a failure there because you're one step closer to the yeses. But when I rely on this and my knowing, I'm
Mm,
always wrong.
yeah.
At a
No,
certain
that's a
point,
good
I'm going to
point.
trip up
Raising capital is a challenge for many founders.
everyone.
From your experience, what separates companies that raise successfully from those that don't?
Traction. Traction is a double-edged sword, but listen, I think it depends what era we're in, right? And how much hype.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, especially after WeWork's collapse and Silicon Valley and everything else,
Yeah.
traction is key, real business is key. You know, investors want to see, not believe, they need to see that people love this. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the ultimate test. That's what they're testing for. Is this going to work? Does your product work? Are people really going to buy that? And
Yeah.
that's what they're looking for.
I always get like different answers for this, and a lot of our
Yeah.
audience are at that stage where they're like, "I want to raise capital," and I'm like, "Just bootstrap." Anyway, that's a whole different subject. But are investors just doing that, or how much of an influence does the actual founder have with VCs making the decision to invest in their business?
Okay, so I'll answer it slightly differently in the sense that what could startup founders do to control their destiny given the set of circumstances that they're working with,
Mm-hmm.
right? So let's first of all, I'm gonna like everything. I'm gonna answer the long way. Rounds of funding. Everybody has a different definition. Here's mine. Friends and family. They invest in you because they know you. They don't get what you're doing. They just invest you because they trust you and they give you
Yeah.
money. Pre-seed. They give you money because they understand they like you and they like the idea. There's no traction.
Mm-hmm.
Seed, there's traction. They like you, they like the idea, and there's some sort of traction or data, Series A up and to the right, pure product market fit. Now, here's the thing. Silicon Valley Bank, WeWork, after that happened, everybody says they're pre-seed, they're not. Everybody's seed, everybody's looking for traction. So when you
Yeah.
speak to investors, put your effort into investors that meet the genre you're in and the size of checks that you want and that are saying pre-seed or seed, right? Because if you
Mm-hmm.
don't have traction, you're talking to seed, it's just that much harder. You can because they say they're pre-seed, but that's just harder. So make sure you're talking to the right people and be specific. Now, the other thing is who you are as a human. You're a
Yes.
fiduciary of their money. They're investing on two criteria. I don't really care who they are. What
Mm-hmm.
is my risk exposure as an investor? Meaning, how risky is this bet? And how much money is this going to return? Now, do I believe that you could execute on this? Will you be a good fiduciary of my money? Meaning, will you not steal it and will you spend it wisely?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And here's the thing, when I call, will you listen? I don't care if I'm writing you a
Mm.
25K check or a $25 million check. Now, it's
Yeah.
hard to manage when you have a lot of investors. The reason you don't want a lot of people on your cap table, forget the paperwork. The lawyers will deal with that. It's that you have a lot of opinions.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I struggle with too is having a lot of opinions come at me and tell them no. But
Yeah.
people want to be heard. They want to know that you're coachable and that when there's something that they, think should be done, you're at least going to test it and take them seriously. If you're the arrogant founder that you can't be coached, you can't be listened to, it's going to get in your way. So if you're trustworthy, coachable, have a strong command and presence, remember, like your command and presence is a thing because you're
Mm-hmm.
going to be on stage, you're going to be raising money, you're going to be the spokesperson, right? So if that's not you, finding a co-founder that I've been that co-founder for many people over the years,
Right.
right? I'm the business guy. I don't code. I'm the smiley face, right? So, which I don't know is good or not, but anyway, um, so those are some things that you can do to control your own destiny. Have your stuff
Yeah.
together, know your numbers, be trustworthy, be coachable.
But then there's the Ubers and the WeWorks of the world where they were successful companies, they had boards, but the founders ended up getting kicked out of their own companies, basically. And that does tend to happen a lot. What can a founder do aside from all the things that you just said early on to get so that when they get to that point, they can still have keep running their businesses?
I'll be really straight. Those
Yeah.
founders deserve to be kicked out.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
And I, the Zuckerberg, the only way you do that is if you have a commanding presence from the beginning. Zuckerberg will never lose control of Meta.
Mm-hmm.
He won't. He can't. The way it's written, Newman at WeWork never lost control of WeWork. They had to buy him out for $1 billion,
Yeah.
right? So, but to be worried about that at the beginning, listen, there are real, I don't think those are the actual examples to speak about. There are real horror stories of I have a lot of friends who really did lose control and get kicked out and they stole the company from them.
Yeah.
And it is a real problem.
Yeah.
Having good attorneys to have your back is a thing. And when you raise from a position of strength. And if you're raising from a position of desperation and just taking the money and punting the problem down the
Mm,
road, that's really where those situations come from,
yeah.
right? But I think there's going to be a huge tendency. There already is. I'm using AI for a lot of my legal work, and
Yeah.
but when it really matters to stuff like this, hire don't hire the cheap attorney. I'm not a big fan of these firms that charge 1,500 an hour. I have conniptions when they do that to me.
Yeah.
But finding a good startup attorney that does this time and time again, the difference between a great attorney and a good one when it comes to this
Mm.
stuff and having your back and knowing what to do to protect you on that, that's where that comes in.
Yeah, but I also just heard you say, it's if you're desperate and you're just taking on any investor, that's what can nib you in the butt later because
It
maybe
will.
you took on an investor who you don't see eye to eye with. They don't have your same beliefs. And maybe they're just in it for the money and you're in it as a passion or
Mhm.
most entrepreneurs are passionate about their startups. But you know what I mean? I think also that desperation blinds you from picking a good investor that aligns with you, your beliefs, your core, and everything else in life.
Yes. And let's just be really straight. Every investor is in it for the money.
Yeah, they want the return on investment for
They
sure.
want the return, right? And um, they could sing kumbaya with you all day. They're in it for the return. Every fund manager is in it for the return. Every angel investor is in it for the return, right?
Yeah,
Um, but having a good attorney is going to protect you. And yeah, if you have a bad feeling, you're getting married to this investor. The two things that will kill your company quicker than anything is a co-founder with poorly written paperwork or no paperwork, and you
mm-hmm.
split up, and investor that is nefarious and has poor paperwork. Have
Mm,
great paperwork and bring the right people on and be wary. Like if you're giving somebody significant equity, you're getting married
yeah.
to them. It's not easy and it will destroy the company quicker than anything.
So let's move on. You've built ventures in very different industries,
I have.
tech, education, and commodities. How do you approach starting from zero in a new field?
I don't know.
You just
Uh,
do it.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, honestly, yeah, I do it. I'm like, here's
Everyone's
an
different,
opportunity,
right?
but I mean, I'm not like, uh, there's an opportunity. Let's go for it. We have an opportunity. If there was an opportunity, I mean, oh, I don't know about this field. I'm not sure. I'm not an
Yeah,
expert.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
let's go for it. I'll learn along the way. I'm going to do my research. I'm going to educate myself. I'm going to read a ton about the subject. And now it's easier than ever. I could write my own research papers that
Yeah.
will give me the world of knowledge in a few hours of reading it.
You're a
So
doer.
doer, yeah, I take action. Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there another way? I don't even know the world that is.
No, that's great. I there's no wrong answers here.
Okay. Yeah.
So one thing that I do want to talk to you about, and if you decide that you don't want to talk to about it, we don't have to, but you've spoken
Okay.
openly about being
Dyslexic.
dyslexic
Yep.
and not learning to read until you were 10.
Mhm.
How has that shaped your resilience in the way you lead today?
It's everything. There's what's the quote? I don't know if anybody watched Shawshank Redemption, but it's one of my favorite
Yeah.
movies. And Andy Dufresne at the end of the movie, not to be a spoiler, crawled through a mile of mud, a mile of, well, poo, right? And came out squeaky clean,
Yeah.
right? I've crawled through that mud for
Mm,
years, right? For 10, 15 years of my life, right? I've had all the ridicule. I didn't think I was smart. I didn't think I was good enough. I just wanted to be normal.
mm,
Um, the depth of what I've gone through and I know I could go through, I know what I'm made of.
mm.
So, no matter how bad it gets, I could really dig deep and see that. And yeah, I guess that, and the other thing that dyslexia really taught me is I see the world differently. I function differently.
Right.
Like everybody, like I show people this. My Audible, I've
Mm-hmm.
listened to about 2,500 books in the last 15 years or so. I don't read it. Reading takes a lot of horsepower. I read fine, but if I read 30 pages, I'm pretty exhausted. Listening, I
Okay.
could listen to for 16 hours straight, but I listen at 4x or 3.5x. It's my
Okay.
superpower. So I
Okay.
consume knowledge that way. So I consume a lot of knowledge and then I see gaps and opportunities. I've started so many companies, I also failed at a bunch, by the way.
Yeah. Oh
Uh,
no, I
and
figured.
and but I see an opportunity to go with it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I see that opportunity, I see the world differently. Just to text properly. Now it's way different with AI, but I always make spelling and grammatical errors. And
Yeah.
like ChatGPT is the best thing ever for me because now I just dictate everything and it's like a jumbled mess. And it's like, okay, here you go. This is what you want to actually say. I'm like, yes, that is what I said. And
Mm-hmm.
it's written professionally and it's in a format that everybody wants to read. And
Yeah.
it doesn't take me a lot of, it's not effort. It's literally there's a neurocognitive load that
Mm-hmm.
it just takes a lot of. I only have so much gas in the tank in any given day from an intellectual perspective, and that takes a disproportionate amount of it to do it if I don't have help.
Right. And I love that because you just used the perfect example of what AI is built for. Now
Yeah,
you're using it to help you be better and get things done faster. And I really like that. I like the idea that you just dictate into it and it gives you exactly what you need.
yeah. I don't like. Thank you, and I don't like. I did like don't like. I don't use AI in a sense of like tell me what to do.
Yeah.
It's hey, I need this, and I need to iterate off of this. Right? But I think everybody's saying, I guess a lot of people for what I'm reading are using it. Tell me what to do, or tell me what you think about this, and not actually critical thinking it.
Yeah.
I still think it's important to do the critical thinking because that's where your growth is going to be. Maybe not for this time, but for next time. And that's how
Yeah.
you're going to keep growing. But, and you want it to be authentic to you, not just
Mm-hmm.
generic.
Let's talk about one of my favorite topics, and I always ask every guest this question, and it's about failures, or as I like to call them,
Mhm.
fuck ups.
Mhm.
We all have one or two or 100. Can you share a time when you had a failure or a fuck up, and what did you learn from it, and how did it make you a better leader?
Okay, so the biggest fuck up I had recently in the last few years, one of my events businesses, I basically signed a huge contract, like $200,000 contract, because that's what you have to
Mm-hmm.
do to get the best prices for hotel rooms. You have to reserve a block. And I emphatically didn't want to do it this way and wanted to find another way. And I was told that this is the only way to do it. And I finally, after 6 months, gave in and listened. And I made the choice to do it. And we signed a contract. And we didn't meet our sales targets, but I signed a contract. So,
Oh,
and so I could either have defaulted on the whole agreement, then defaulted on all the memberships and people that paid,
yeah,
or I could have sucked it up and paid the balance and went 80K in
right.
the hole doing so.
So
And
what did you do?
I paid the 80K and saved the business.
Yeah.
And it never, and and it's always been in a hole since. But because I did it for a few reasons. One, somebody else would have been hanging the bag and I would have screwed them. And I would have
Mm-hmm.
been defaulting on an agreement and it would have just been everything would have just been a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I still would have been screwed either way. But the mistake was, and this is where I said I found my authenticity again, is I knew better.
Mm,
I knew better.
yeah.
I wanted to appease my partners. I wanted to stop arguing about it. And I wanted to move on. And I
Yeah.
wanted to take a leap. And I was being I feel like the people in the conversation wouldn't appreciate this, but I felt like my feeling at times I was being accused of being stubborn and a know-it-all and not being coachable. And I said the
Ah,
number one thing is to be coachable. So
yeah.
I was like, well, maybe I'm not being coachable. Maybe they do know well. I'll trust them. But no, I know
Right.
business well, and I knew better. And it was a huge
Yeah.
fuck up.
And you
And
were right.
I was right. I'm always
Yeah.
right. No, but see, my ego creeps in. But no,
See, be coachable.
yeah, but but it's this dance, right? Because I knew I was
Yeah.
right, but I wanted to be coachable. And where's the thing? But I listened to other opinions, and so and you know what I think about opinions, and so it's this dance, right? You need to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
coachable.
yeah.
You need to listen to opinions, but then the opinions are assholes, and it's like so it's always this dance. You're never, and but as a fuck up, I'm still paying, right? I mean, like
Yeah, you still had to pay.
I'm never gonna recoup that. Well, it's paid, it's done,
Mm-hmm.
it's over, but I'm never gonna recoup that.
Yeah.
The business never recovered from it. Um, but it's in the past. I did it. I learned a lot. It was an
Yeah, I
expensive
know for
mistake.
sure.
It was a second
I
MBA.
I can relate to that a little bit because like that's one of the things I struggle with sometimes, and I think a lot of people do, where it's like I know what I'm doing, but I know I'm not the smartest person in the room. I don't want to think that I am. I'm in front of someone who's had a career for like 60 years and they just know better. But like in sometimes I'm like, I know this, but this person's so much wiser than me. I'm gonna listen to them. And then you end up feeling like, oh, I was right. I shouldn't have listened. So it's such a hard place to be because sometimes like you want to be humbled and you want to be coachable, but you can also be right. How do you
So,
manage that?
so I think it's this, right? It's a data point. Somebody else's
Mm,
opinion is a data point. You
okay.
take that and you put it into the equation and you listen to it and you factor it into the equation. Now, to
Mm,
say, I need to redo an equation because of this person's opinion, I think that's where we're getting jumbled up. But to say this is a data point in this equation, and I'm going to factor it in,
mm,
right? And as long as you're factoring that in and you're still coming out, like
yeah.
redo the math and you still come out with the same answer, even with that opinion,
Right.
right? It's not right or wrong. It's an equation. And I think that's the way to
Mm-hmm.
it's balancing which one wins. Okay, we got more weight here, right? We got more weight here, but it's still this one's still coming out.
Mm, got it. So I want to ask another question to that. So let's say it's your board, for example, and someone on your board is like, I think you should go about this problem this way, and you feel obligated to listen
So
to them because you want them to think you're coachable, etc. How would you deal with something like that?
I actually have I have multiple examples.
Okay.
Um, I'll give you two. One is me handling it
Okay.
the right way, or wrong way, but both. I don't know if they're right,
Okay.
right or not, but I'll give you two examples. So one is these two investors, angel investors, came in and they were e-commerce and they thought they knew everything about our business and I don't even know what we were talking about. This is 10 years ago. They come in.
Hmm.
I left the room screaming at them, screaming. My co-founder was like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm screaming. I'm like, "You guys don't," and they're wrong. They're dumb. They're wrong. We're pivoting. That's what it was. They're pivoting. We spent like $1 million on the idea. It wasn't working. And I came up with a pivot. We agreed to pivot. We needed to pivot. We pivoted. We saved the company. But they were emphatic that we needed to double down and spend the rest of our $200,000 left in the bank account, like 3, 4 months of burn. And we just bet on black. And I was like, you guys are nuts. Because this
Hmm.
is the only thing that they knew. And they invested us. And that's the thing. Now I think about it. They invested us not because of our purpose, but because they understood that business. They
Mm.
understood that idea. We pivoted. They didn't understand it. They didn't like it.
Makes sense.
Anyway, I don't know if that's the best way to handle it. My partner smoothed things over, and I never spoke to those guys again. And
Yeah, they probably let's keep you
so,
out of the room, but okay.
but I was a little hotter back then.
Okay.
But in any case, and I keep my temperature down. So then, a similar company 2 years later, um, or same company, sorry, 2 years later, our RVCs, by the way, this VC, I think their portfolio went up to like 38 billion
Wow.
during COVID. They were one of the most successful portfolios in COVID. They were one of the most successful VCs. Know them well, know both partners very well, had a very good relationship with them. And there was an inflection point where we're like, guys, we needed to go this way.
Mm.
We're no longer going to be $1 billion idea or $1 billion company. It's more like $100 million idea if we pull it off. But the chance of us pulling it off is like 80%.
Mm.
And the chances of us staying on this track and being $1 billion idea, well, that's like 1%. They're like, we want you to
Mm.
go for the $1 billion idea. And I'm like, we can't. That's stupid. They're like, we don't care if you guys fail. We
Oh.
want you to fail. It doesn't matter. Because to them, because a VC's mindset is really simple. Their portfolio is constructed. Somebody has a 2x exit, it doesn't matter to them.
Mm-hmm.
They need 20 to 50x returns. Otherwise, the math, I could get into math, we don't have time for it, but just trust me, they need 20 to 50x returns or 10x returns or higher.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't get it, it doesn't matter. So they'd rather you fail. So, but for us, 100x return, sorry, $100 million company is everything,
Yeah.
right? So our interests weren't aligned, and that's just business. There is no VC that is going to align with this principle, right? Some are
Yeah.
nicer than others, but we went the other way. They removed themselves from the board. They never spoke to us again. They wrote us off in the portfolio because at that moment we were already dead.
Mm.
They're the chairman of our board. They're active. They're proactive. They helped us with investment. They were amazing until that moment
Mm.
because they were never going to see a return. They made a business decision. I don't blame them for it.
Yeah.
They lost respect for us, which I didn't like the way they made me feel about that.
Mm-hmm.
But they made a business decision and I understand it. So, but they wanted us to do something. I didn't agree with it emphatically. We never spoke again. They're the
Yeah.
most successful VCs. So I don't know. Should I have done it a different way? I don't know. We wouldn't be in business.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have
But those are the
succeeded.
risks that you take, right?
But that's the name of the game. So
Yeah.
anyway, I mean, that's just a on the court way of answering your questions of what I did, and I don't
No,
know if
I
they're the
get it.
right ways or not, but that's what
Yeah.
happened.
Well, we're coming up on time, but before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask you, if you could leave every founder listening with one piece of advice about scaling or a business, what would it be?
Trust yourself. Trust the path you're on. Trust the universe has your back.
Okay. That's good advice. Rob, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time and all of your knowledge and wisdom. It was so nice chatting with you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. It was great. I really appreciate your questions and where you took the conversation. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I want to thank Rob for joining me today and for being so raw and real about what it takes to lead through burnout, ego, and failure. What stood out to me is how Rob talked about rediscovering his power by simplifying, by returning to his roots, his friends, and his purpose. Because when you strip away the noise, that's where clarity and confidence are rebuilt. And that's a wrap. To our listeners, thank you for joining me on this journey of learning, growth, and inspiration. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform and connect with our community on social media. I'd love to hear your feedback, so leave a review and let me know what topics you'd want to explore in future episodes. Remember, the future belongs to those who embrace challenges, adapt with tenacity, and keep pushing forward. Keep growing, keep pivoting, and most importantly, stay tenacious in your pursuits. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to bringing you more insightful conversations in our upcoming episodes. This is Sonia signing off, but as always, keep chasing your dreams with tenacity.